Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guests today are Jackie Tomic, the Vice President for Public Sector for Cortex by Palo Alto Networks, and Kevin Brownstein, Senior Manager for Systems Engineering for Cortex by Palo Alto Networks. Jackie, Kevin, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. And so, Jackie, if I could start with you, we know federal agencies are moving out to adopt zero trust architectures under the Federal Zero Trust Strategy issued last year. Can you kind of get us up to speed, though, on where agencies are at and what they're trying to do with this zero trust push?
Sure. Well, honestly, I feel like there's such a big marketing campaign around zero trust, but it is that constant verification and validation of action, really, around the users, the entities, right? And of course, the applications and infrastructure.
Yeah, it's a big marketing term these days, but there's some actual meat behind that marketing term. Kevin, I think one piece of this is there's security operations centers across government. They've been there to one extent or another for a while, but what role does a SOC play within a zero trust architecture?
Really, for zero trust in the SOC, it's about being that central point of validation and being able to monitor the infrastructure, the applications, the users, the infrastructure, and have the rich telemetry and data that they need to assure that the zero trust architecture that they're implementing is actually effective.
And you see agencies trying to push toward things like a modern zero trust architecture, digital transformation, just more modern technologies in the cloud and things like that. But they still have a lot of legacy infrastructure in place. They really struggle with trying to update and modernize and then move to the future. How are you seeing agencies try to strike that balance with these mandates that they also have to comply with?
Yeah, it's a lot for the agencies. And adopting zero trust doesn't mean a rip and replace with everything that they've invested in over the years. And there's a lot of expertise with those tools. But I think the successful SOCs have strategies around integration and automation of new tools that they need for zero trust, as well as the legacy tools.
And Jackie, he mentioned integration and automation. What role does automation play under zero trust?
I'm going to steal one of Kevin's favorite lines, because I think it's completely accurate. Automation doesn't mean automatic. I think it is about creating efficiency and effectiveness. With automation does come orchestration, right? To really empower people to make the right human decision at the right time. I do think for so long we led with tools and then we added humans and then we led with humans and we added tools. And it really is about managing and leveraging existing infrastructure, legacy systems and know-how to create that true efficiency and effectiveness. Again, automation doesn't mean automatic, but it could, right? Especially things that have sort of a low risk, right? We definitely block these items. And then we have a process or, a way to say, gosh, I need to look at that one more time.
Sure. And we know agencies have limited budgets for these types of cyber projects. We know that they have limited resources and staffing, especially among the cyber workforce. There are some efforts to get after that, but I think it's fair to say it's not going to be a problem that's solved tomorrow. With just talking about automation and zero trust, how can agencies kind of, make these big leaps with those limited budgets, with that limited staff going forward?
Yeah, I think, honestly, Kevin, you teed it up by saying integration, right? How do we leverage what's working and that critical infrastructure that's already in place as a foundation, and then really empowering that workforce? And I think, another term that can be used in different ways is the true AI capability. It's about intelligent analytics, though, right, and policy enforcement. I don't know what else you have.
Yeah, successful SOCs can implement strategies where they learn, and some of that can be AI, it can be machine learning, based on, when this happens and these factors occur, 98% of the time we take these steps. That's worth either automating or informing an analyst to make them more effective.
Yeah, you hear about how automation, AI, machine learning can really help bridge this gap that we see in cybersecurity. What's the kind of state of the art in that today? What can that actually do versus what's more kind of in the research development phase off in the future?
Yeah, I think really, what we're moving towards, and I think a lot of the industry is looking at, is taking in rich telemetry. And part of that is the traditional logs that you get and that you're mandated to collect. But also taking in rich telemetry from endpoints, from the network, combining it together to make good decisions. And some of that can be automation and can be automated based on the machine learning. But also, being able to take that information and then run a standard playbook against it. And this sort of allies well with Zero Trust in that it adds consistency. So, when these things occur, our standard operating procedure is to take these steps. And automation can help enable that.
Yeah, I think over the past several years, you've seen not just federal agencies, but organizations almost in this constant triage mode, and it'd be good to have a playbook and an automated playbook, I guess, in place going forward for these types of incidents. And you mentioned logging, and I wanted to ask about that. There's been this push under the Cybersecurity Executive Order, re-emphasized by the Zero Trust strategy, for agencies to increase their logging, retention, and management of network logs. What does that mean for agencies? What role does that play into kind of this access and visibility you need under Zero Trust?
Yeah, I think it's critical for Zero Trust because what we've seen sort of is an evolution in the SIM market or logging where it was compliance-based. So I'm holding on to these logs because this regulation says I must hold on to them for X amount of time, and they sit essentially in cold storage until someone says, oh, go get me the logs. It's a change in approach, and I think the executive order not only lays down mandates and recommendations around the types of logs to keep, but really the rich telemetry, the certain parts of those logs, and that enables AI and ML because it provides the context that's necessary for automation and machine learning that's actually relevant.
And I think it also frees up the analyst to have real high impact capability. It also keeps the work interesting, right? I think we've all heard of alert fatigue. Well, let's avoid that. That also attracts, highly intelligent, efficient workforce, right? And a way to really maximize their capabilities. We've really kind of flipped the model, I think, and that's one of the things that excites me about sort of the day job, if you will, is to really lead with automation first. And so that by the time we need, a highly trained, skilled analyst, it's something that really needs their attention and their skill set.
Got it. I mean, you mentioned alert fatigue. Mm-hmm. There are, vulnerabilities that crop up every day, critical vulnerabilities that crop up every week. How can federal agencies protect themselves, quickly discover potential exposures in this kind of landscape where things are always shifting and evolving and new threats kind of rise up and take away yesterday's priority? Well,
I think you kind of summarized, right? I mean, yesterday is yesterday, but a piece of that might play into today. And I think we talk about it all the time, really understanding what your attack surface really looks like. It's not just what you know, but it's what could be, including workloads and services. We've all transitioned in and out of sort of a hybrid environment over the last 3 years, 3.5 years almost. Your cell phone is now connected to the network, and maybe it wasn't before. And I think that understanding really helps with prioritization.
Yeah, I mean, the attack surface has changed so much, definitely over the past few years coming out of COVID, work from home, that type of environment. But also cloud infrastructure, where it used to be maybe 5-10 years ago, the attack surface was very defined. If I was talking to a customer and they wanted to talk about their attack surface, they might slide a spreadsheet over and this is everything that we've got that's exposed. Now it's sort of understanding the unknowns in the attack surface so you can truly be proactive, right? And when these vulnerabilities come out, it's much easier to correlate them if you know what you have. And then you can understand the true vulnerability that you have, not just the vulnerability itself and the mechanism that it takes.
You started talking about it there, but I'm wondering how the security operations centers themselves have evolved over the past couple of years. I think DHS's CIO recently testified that they kind of consolidated a lot of their SOCs. They had like 4 across DHS, and they brought them all together. That's just one example potentially, but how have the questions that they're asking inside the SOC changed with this kind of changing attack surface?
So I think that customers now, and government customers, definitely have a better understanding of their attack surface and the scope of the threat. And the consolidation of SOCs doesn't mean that their importance in the infrastructure is any less. Consolidation facilitates communication, where I might have an east and west SOC, but now I've combined them as one functional unit. So they can take all the rich data they have, the telemetry and the threat intelligence, and all work together on it.
And I think something that you'll start to see more is internet operation management, right? That's really what we see the operations centers doing today. And again, that idea and concept of automation around attack surface remediation, right? Knowing that there's a vulnerability doesn't mean it's the top vulnerability in your enterprise. It's really understanding what assets it may affect and to what degree. And so we see that kind of coming together as we see consolidation and again, addressing workforce challenges.
And that's kind of the risk management approach that everybody's kind of been working toward for the past, 2 decades or decade or whatever since NIST put it out. Internet operation management, I haven't heard that term before. Can you flesh that out?
Sure, I think you'll start to see it a little bit more. I think the DoD has really adopted it as far as how they're leveraging attack surface management in the day-to-day operations, right, for prioritization and really looking at externally facing assets the way an adversary could, right? So including that as part of the standard operating procedure.
Got it. Yeah, and there was just a cybersecurity infrastructure security agency alert around internet exposed devices. Agencies have to lock those down either with zero trust or take them off the internet now. So that's a pretty big deal in the federal world.
Yeah, I think it's important that understanding your attack surface is not a single point in time. So it used to be we would run our scans on Sunday night at 3 a.m. because that's when there's very low network traffic and we're less likely to notice something. It has to be continuous now, continuous monitoring the attack surface, because the cloud, work from home, basically shadow IT popping up. It's got to be 24/7 because the adversary doesn't wait till 3 a.m. on Sunday, right? They're constantly monitoring. They're constantly probing for vulnerabilities.
Shadow IT always makes me think of some computer in a dark room just nefariously punching some bad data away. But like what exactly is that in the context of especially the pandemic and it really growing during that period?
Yeah, absolutely. And most people with shadow IT, they're trying to do their job and do it quickly. They won't go through approved channels. So if they have a corporate relationship with a cloud service provider or a government relationship, they'll go to another one because they might be faster, but the standards won't be there. So they're trying to do their job. It's not malicious, but most agencies do find they have some degree of shadow IT where people have not followed the standard operating procedures when it comes to standing up IT resources.
A workaround that's a little easier that still gets the job done, right? And it's not typically monitored, but it could be a vector for vulnerability.
Right. And I guess that's another pitch for IT modernization because folks often put those workarounds in place because they don't necessarily have what they need to begin with. All right, I wanted to ask a little bit about this information sharing in the cyber world that we're always hearing about is really important, kind of just what you see over there, you should tell the folks over there so that they're aware that the threat is out here. That's very broad generalization, but what should folks be doing with this kind of increased threat intelligence information sharing? How can they actually take advantage of that?
Yeah, there's a lot more threat information sharing out there because it's very effective, right? So if one organization finds something or sees something, it is in everyone's best interest to share the information. Where it becomes a challenge is making that actionable. So one of the things that we work really hard with our customers on is fusing threat information into their SOC, into their systems. So if an analyst is investigating a threat, they can bring in the threat intelligence of where a certain botnet might exist or where it has occurred in the past, or talking about the methodology of the threat actor, and have that on the single pane of glass while they're investigating what's going on in their infrastructure.
Yeah, operationalizing threat intelligence isn't easy. I would say it's evolved from, hey, this is the information I have more IP addresses than you do, right? But it's really fusing all of those feeds, if you will, data sources, even if it's bespoke from the agency itself, into a way that can be utilized to prioritize, risk and or the challenges that the SOC is facing that day.
Got it. All right. And what are some things to look out for in the future? We talked a lot about how we've gotten here. We've talked a lot about the zero trust push. Mm-hmm. Jackie, what are you watching for out in the future?
I think it really is about workforce for me and really leveraging sort of machine learning, but true AI analytics, right? Intelligent analytics to get the best outcome based on a prioritization and impact to the enterprise. Again, flipping that model of automation first really allows us to do the heavy lifting on the front end to reduce time to remediation and to really give, I would say, a broad spectrum view the way an attacker would see the enterprise, right? And those two things combined will lead to, I think, a better outcome overall.
Kevin, any thoughts going forward?
Yeah, I think going forward, we may see more stack consolidation where we take information from one system to another and its rawest form where it really can't be operationalized. A lot of our customers are looking to leverage at Palo Alto our platform because it all speaks the same language. And they're able to really consolidate that information, consolidate the different platforms and interfaces that they have to learn, and they can be that much more effective.
Got it. And go ahead.
I was going to say just one other note. I think also the customer is looking for true partnership, not just, we hear these cyclical terms, right? Best in breed, number one here, number one there, but really what's the ecosystem for success and having a true cybersecurity partner, to understand their mission requirements, their success metrics, right? And some of the challenges that they face and how to kind of get to success faster. And honestly, that's why I work here, because I see it every day where we have an impact. And I think that is the future of cybersecurity overall, right? How do we partner for that best efficiency?
I mean, you mentioned workforce, and I'm just wondering, as these sort of strategies and the tooling and things like that continue to evolve, how are you seeing agencies maybe approach workforce development, training, and how does that play into this conversation?
I do get the concept of mission impossible when I hear that and moving things around on the screen, but I think it is part of that, right? Keeping the work super interesting so that by the time I'm looking at something as a skilled analyst, gosh, I'm going to find what I'm looking for. I'm going to be able to document it, create a process, or maybe even a playbook around that so I can move on to the next super scary mess, right? That's a technical term. And, I think that's part of it, right? Because I think our government is under attack all the time. I think our enterprises are. I think, many infrastructures are in general. But I think we see some really interesting things where the time to education is much shorter. I think the work is super interesting and engaging, and I think it has a material impact across national security as well as, our country.
Right. Kevin, I mean, from the workforce kind of engineer's perspective, what are you seeing going on there?
I think from the technical perspective, if you really want to develop the workforce, one of the best things that we can do is get rid of those monotonous tasks.
Right.
From a cyber protection standpoint, it has great effects because it frees up the individual to focus on the things that really matter. But it also helps you retain that workforce. And really a cybersecurity professional, an analyst in a SOC, should be threat hunting, should be looking at the consoles, working with the tools, but there is also a really great effect for learning, right? Reading those threat reports, doing some research, and really investing in the professionals. That'll enable agencies to maintain that workforce and then ultimately be successful.
And Jackie, just following up kind of on the workforce theme, for senior leaders who might be watching this, what do you think are the important soft skills within the context of this conversation around the future of cyber?
I really do appreciate that because I think we spend so much time talking about the tooling and the technology and somewhat the process, right? The must-haves, but truly it comes down to the people, right? I mean, it is about resiliency, it is opportunity to research and really understand all vectors that make up that decision process. So for me, it's people first.
All right. Well, great considerations from you both here. Thanks for the insights. Again, I'd like to thank Jackie Tomic, the Vice President for Public Sector for Cortex by Palo Alto Networks, and Kevin Brownstein, Senior Manager for Systems Engineering for Cortex by Palo Alto Networks. Thanks to you both.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I'm your moderator, Justin Doubleday, and you're watching Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search Palo Alto Networks.